So Frank, I've heard that this course is helpful when companies have a few people who know how to do a job the best way in terms of quality and productivity. Can you explain a little more about that?
Yeah, so training within industry, job instruction is all about finding your employees who have what I would say are those key skills, that tribal knowledge that makes that employee capable of doing that job the one best way possible, and taking that employee and training him or her so that he or she is the best possible trainer they can be, right? So I'll give you for instance. Let's say you've got a setup job on a complicated piece of equipment, and you've got an employee who's been doing that setup for 35 years. And every instance where another employee is chosen to do that setup, it takes twice as long. Or alternatively, maybe it doesn't take twice as long, but the setup results, when it's done by someone else, in scrap for the first hour that the machine runs. Well, that business needs to figure out a way. It's great you've got that one employee who's doing that setup so perfectly, but that business needs to find a way to train that employee so that he or she is the best possible trainer, and then can actually start multiplying those skills among the rest of the workforce. It's amazing to me how basic that sounds, but how key that is to so many businesses and ensuring that they have the flexibility to be efficient, regardless of whether or not they have workforce changes.
Now, what type of companies can benefit from this training, and what would be the ideal employees to enroll in this type of training?
Yeah, so this training, Dean, it dates back to the World War II era and was really originally created for manufacturing businesses. But I've seen it prove extremely useful in any type of an organization where you have employees whose skills need to be multiplied, okay? Or where you have employees who, let's take, for instance, you've got an employee who's getting ready to retire. And that employee, before she retires, has to actually have the time to start training some other people. Doesn't matter what the business is, that's a need that we see everywhere. We hear a lot about the silver tsunami and the repercussions after waves of employees end up retiring. That need is the same, whether it's an insurance firm or whether it's a manufacturing organization.
How do the job instruction breakdowns used in TWI job instruction differ from a company's engineering work instructions?
Yeah, so now we're getting into a little bit of the details here of how TWI-JI works. One of the key get ready to instruct items in this discipline is creating what's called a job instruction breakdown. And sometimes we abbreviate that as a JIB. That job instruction breakdown is much simpler than most engineering work instructions you're going to see. In fact, they're written with a language that allows anyone on the factory floor to be able to understand that language when it's used, okay? Engineering work instructions, I'll speak from experience. I spent a lot of time early in my career writing them. We tend, as engineers, to write them as though our audience is engineers. Yeah. The reality is that job breakdown and the words used in it is key to getting people trained. So the audience had better be people who, may not even have a high school education, right? We've got to write it in the simplest possible terms necessary. A JIB is about three things. It's about, what do I do? Those are the important steps. Typically, we limit a job breakdown to have no more than maybe 10 of those. Then the key points. The key points are how I do it. Those key points might have to do with a specific aspect to how I do it that keeps the employee safe, makes or breaks the job, or that one little aspect of how I do it that makes it easier to do, like a trick or a knack or a bit of tribal knowledge. And then the third aspect of a JIB is the why. Why do I do it that way? What's the reason for that key point? So, for instance, might be, what am I doing? I'm loosening the bolt. How am I doing it? Key point number one, I'm turning it counterclockwise. Key point number two, I'm using a ratchet with a 1/2-inch drive. Why? Mm-hmm. Because if I don't use a 1/2-inch drive ratchet, I'm not going to get that bolt loosened easily. Okay, that's an example of a key point. Typically, you don't see those basic things in an engineering work instruction, and that's where they tend to lose their utility on the factory floor.
So, Frank, can you give me an example of a situation where you've seen a company that's benefited in today's economic environment from the use of TWI-JI?
Sure. And actually, I think the example I'm going to give is kind of nice because what it does is it shows the relevance to the lean journey of a company as well. So we worked with a textile manufacturer a while back here. And that textile manufacturer had a challenge in that when we mapped their value stream, you know, for those of you who have done value stream mapping, you realize one of the things I'm looking for is flow. Well, when we mapped their value stream, we recognized that there was one particular point in the value stream where flow was challenged by an operation. Okay. That operation was like a braiding or a weaving operation, let's say. Work in process inventory built considerably in front of that operation, and root cause analysis revealed that we had one operator who knew how to effectively and efficiently change over those braiders. So this is exactly the type of situation that the TWI Commission encountered back during World War II in terms of missile guidance system lens grinding. Okay, you got a lot of different steps that went into changing over a braider, but only about maybe 10 to 15% of those steps were complicated and tough to teach. So we broke down that braiding operation. We went into that braiding operation or weaving operation setup procedure, particularly the part that was most complicated, into what's called a job instruction breakdown, and used that job instruction breakdown. Actually, the expert in the area used that job instruction breakdown to train others. You know, flash forward to a few months later, we took another snapshot of the value stream, and having used TWI job instruction to make that changeover operator the best possible trainer she could be, we now had the ability to change over machines more often. We had the ability to run a higher variety of textiles through that operation. And lo and behold, work in process inventory had decreased, which means we had better flow through the area. So to me, that was an awesome example of a long-term challenge that was addressed by introducing standard work, for one, but also making that skilled tradesperson a good trainer. And JI is perfect for that.
I'm sure you've seen, Frank, some of the most skilled employees at these businesses don't really like training others. Can this program help them to become better effective trainers, and I guess help them overcome their hesitancy to train others?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Dean, I've seen that happen on many occasions. You know, one of the things I saw when I was in manufacturing operations as a plant manager, or as a value stream manager, was that sometimes you'd have an employee from one generation very hesitant to train up someone from a newer generation. Well, if that employee from an older generation has this skill and has honed this skill of training others the way TWI-JI helps her to hone those skills, then when that new employee comes in, you're going about this training effort the same way you've trained everyone else you've ever encountered. Let's put it this way, Dean, I've never seen this tool ineffective. I've never seen a situation where an employee was unable to use this tool, even in an instance where perhaps that employee was a little hesitant to share the skills that he or she had learned over the years.
Yep.
There's a satisfaction that I've seen in a lot of employees once they realize, wow, I can actually spread my knowledge.
Sure. I'll just kind of wrap up here. Is certification available with this course, Frank?
Yes. So TWI job instruction is a certification course.
Okay.
The certificate is called a 10-hour certificate. And the way it works is each employee will go through approximately 10 hours of training. But then in addition to that, there'll be one-on-one training that'll be offered in the form of mentoring afterward.
Excellent.
And that mentoring gives the employee an opportunity after the classes are over to kind of work with the trainer, work with myself shoulder to shoulder out there on the factory floor or right at the work site using the TWI method to train others, so that I have an opportunity as the instructor to kind of coach and give feedback on some of the softer skills and the way the JI method is being used. So that's a very powerful aspect of this course, is actually getting out there at the machine and seeing how in the dynamic of the factory environment, for instance, the JI method works. Let's face it, the way we communicate when we're standing next to a loud machining center is going to be a lot different than the way we communicate sitting across a conference room table. So once that mentoring is complete, each employee is certified as a TWI job instruction trainer.
Great. Excellent. All right. Well, this has been a great overview of TWI job instruction, and I think gives people an overarching understanding of what they can expect from participating in this training course. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Dean.